So you're seeing your favorite Instagram gurus running their feet through sand, but is it really going to make you more explosive? Hey everyone, James here from Sweet Science of Fighting, and if you find some new information in this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It's going to help me make more content for you for your combat sports training. Firstly, before we dive into whether training in sand is going to make you more explosive, we need to define what explosive is. Now, being explosive could be defined as power, where that's the force you produce multiplied by the velocity of the movement. However, this doesn't take into account time, and time is vitally important in sport because you are restrained by it in certain movements. Now, we can break it down further. We can go down to the stretch shorten cycle, and we can look at slow and fast stretch shorten cycle movements. Now, the stretch shorten cycle is simply the ability to store and use elastic energy, and that's done mainly through the tendon. So the tendon is what connects the muscle to bone. When we're looking at slow stretch shorten cycle movements, think about like a vertical jump or even taking a shot in wrestling. We're looking at mainly the muscle and the tendon working together. When we're looking at fast stretch shorten cycle movements, we're looking at mainly just the tendon moving. That's how quick it is. And these fast stretch shorten cycle movements are known as plyometrics and can also be classed under reactive strength or reactivity. Now, this generally occurs under around 250 milliseconds of ground contact time, which is very quick. And under that is if you're throwing double kicks or double punches, that's where you fall under that reactive strength area. So if you're a striker, you generally need more of this reactive strength than a grappler. If you're an MMA athlete, you're going to need a good blend of both. Now, both the slow and the fast stretch shorten cycle can be trained through various jumping and plyometric movements. So the typical way you would train to improve your power output in the gym, you would do to improve the stretch shorten cycle. It just needs to have a counter movement. So for example, a vertical jump or a box jump would just develop that slow stretch shorten cycle, whereas doing things like skipping or very fast rebounds off the floor like a drop jump would develop that fast stretch shorten cycle. So this brings me to training on sand. Now, I've talked about being reactive off the ground. If you're jumping onto a hard surface, wooden floor, a grass field, whatever that is, you're going to get that immediate feedback when you hit the floor. When you hit the floor, you can bounce off it and jump as high as you can. When you're on sand, it's a different story. Sand is a compliant surface. So when you land on sand, the sand gives, and that increases your ground contact time. So if you're going to train on sand and you want to develop reactive strength and you want to perform various hurdle hops and different jumps over cones, you're going to increase ground contact time, and that increasing ground contact time no longer gives you that reactivity through the tendon. So if we talk about fast stretch shorten cycle, we have the muscle will sit still, we have the tendon underneath. When we hit the ground quickly, we see a stretch in the tendon and the muscle remains relatively the same length. When we have a slow stretch shorten cycle movement or a longer ground contact time, we see a lengthening of the tendon, but we also see a lengthening of the muscle together. And that compliant tendon and muscle movement is not going to develop that reactivity that you need when you're bouncing around or performing movements on a hard surface. So is there a time that you should ever train on sand? Well, the sand can offer some benefits if you're not looking at it purely from a reactive or explosive standpoint. For example, training in the sand can make the workout feel harder just because you now have that compliant surface where you don't have that reactivity off the floor, and now places more stress on the muscles, having them to do more work. This greater workout intensity doesn't seem to carry over to the next day in terms of too much fatigue like you would if you were going to go really hard in the gym within your normal workout. Further, if you do suffer from any kind of knee pain, training in the sand can help mitigate some of that. Also, if you're doing things like plyometrics in the sand, which I was mentioning that we wouldn't do for explosive reasons, but for whatever reason, if you had that on your training day, it does seem to reduce soreness the following day compared to performing on normal ground, but that's just because you're not getting that same impact. So if you're looking to become more explosive for your combat sport, avoid performing your explosive training in the sand, or most of your training anyway in the sand. If you're going to use the sand, maybe after a competition period, perhaps you've just had a tournament or a fight and you got a little bit of an off season, then you can perform some of your conditioning in the sand as a way of some variety within your training. But if your sole goal is to become more explosive and more reactive, then avoid the sand at all costs. Now, if you go down in the description, I've got a full blog post written up on this with references and everything, so you can go scan through that. And please remember to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel.